Welcome to By the Cottage Hearth with Dana Maree. I'll be taking you through the journey we make as healers, the impact we're yet to make, and the words to use to describe it. Come on in. Welcome back to the Hearth. Today we're going to be speaking with Jenna Wilson from Agape the Heart, intuitive coaching, and we're going to be talking about the importance of doing things your own way and making your own rules. Hi, Jenna. Thank you for jumping on with me today.
Thank you, Dana. Thanks for having me.
So I loved this topic when you sent it through because I think it's something that so many of us relate to, this idea of making your own rules, because, you know, being a healer, we don't come with a guidebook. There's no instruction manual, even if sometimes we wish there was, not that we'd follow it anyway. None of us would listen to it. We'd just write our own one. But I'd love to hear more about your work and why this comes up so much for you.
Yes, it's a big one in the profession that I'm building as a doula and a midwife turned kind of like coach and healer, and for new parents. I mean, that's my niche and my passion work, and who I work with and love supporting this kind of make your own rules mentality, because there's so much out there, right, to like tell us how to do things as parents. I mean, a super, I think, relatable but also really fresh example for me is I was on a like early pregnancy resource class through an organization I teach for just the other night, and there were a handful of parents on there sharing this experience. They all, in different ways, were having a similar experience of Googling things like right away. Like, you know, they got their positive pregnancy test that morning, and then they're at Thanksgiving dinner. So I'm in the US, you know, we just celebrated American Thanksgiving. They're like, can I eat venison while I'm pregnant? Yeah. And so my heart just kind of like breaks for that kind of moment of just like unsureness and how do you make those kinds of decisions, and what is the right way. And there's so much overwhelming information out there as parents, as healers. I mean, I've been working on launching this business for the last like year and a half, and you know, so many freebies and in my inbox, and like, do it this way, and here's my system. So my system is, but like my approach is like, okay, let's enjoy the kitty play in the background there. But yeah, like just go with the flow, and like feel into ourselves as the authority more. And that's a huge kind of process, and takes lots of steps to like first feel safe in ourselves, and then learn how to listen. A lot of that has to do with slowing down, and then learn how to trust what you're hearing and then act on it. So that's like big picture what I'm all about.
But I love that you went there, because that feeling safe and trusting yourself. Like I find that for myself, I'm a vulva Norse practitioner, and my work, like vulva haven't been a career since ancient like Viking times. So there is no instruction manual. There is no way to know exactly what you're doing is the right path, but it comes back to feeling safe enough to trust that this is the right thing for me, that all of these pieces that are everywhere, you know, other people might be saying, oh, you need to be very specific and you can't have all of these pieces. And you think, well, but that's what my work is. My work encompasses all of those pieces. So they all have to fit in there. And then all of those, you know, freebies, when you're, you know, bringing that into an online business, and you've worked with your modality, and you know the energy, and you know the people, and what you want to do, but then you have but you need to do it this way, and it has to be structured, and you have to have the freebie. Like it's, I think feeling safe enough to trust yourself, that what you're doing is going the right way. This is slowing down, and this is where I need to be right now to experience and understand the process. I absolutely love that you went there because it's so important.
It is. Yeah, it's a life. I mean, it's a life journey
Yeah.
to be learning how to navigate that. And what I love so much about working with parents is that they are kind of forced into this opportunity to reflect, right? And like,
Yeah.
oh, they're stepping onto a completely new path of becoming parents. And so if they do kind of like take the opportunity or give themselves the opportunity to think about how things were done for them and how they might want to do things differently. Um, it's just such a potent time for kind of developing these new tools and patterns and strategies. And a little bit can go a long way. Like, it's not like you have to, go from eating McDonald's a few times a week to like completely vegan overnight in your pregnancy. Like, that's not what I'm
About.
about either. But just like I was working with a coach last year who called it needlepoint shifts.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So like just a little change in kind of like the course direction. um and then over time, instead of going this way, like it'll immediately look like, oh, you're just going over here, but over time you end up way over there
Yeah.
instead of over there.
Yeah.
So that's, there's always room for growth. And uh it's been a really fun process to pivot my business, while also staying in kind of like the parent
That
birth
space.
realm, because it's always fresh and new, and I'm consistently humbled by um,
Yeah.
learning things.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that. What has the journey been to where you are now? Like, what has shifted for you that this is the trajectory you were going on, and then you made that needlepoint pivot to go where you are now?
Oh boy.
Yeah.
I wouldn't call that a needlepoint pivot per se, but I'll do my best to
Yeah.
summarize
Go
the
for it.
journey. Yeah, so stepping into birth work was really like a light bulb epiphany for me in 2007. It's a really fun story, and so I'll just share like the
Go
little
for it.
Cliff
Go for
Notes
it.
version. I was in a nightclub with a girlfriend in Southern California, and the band was from Los Angeles, and so we were about 90 miles north, and noticing kind of all these LA people. They were noticeably like not our kind of like small town crew. And there was something about the fashion that they brought, and at the time that was very kind of like androgynous and almost masculine, and all these very thin women just kind of like not wearing stuff like this, they're just not showing a lot of femininity. So we were just, like, oh, like, women's roles in society and fashion, and just talking about how kind of like that, and the nurturing role of the feminine is so often kind of cast aside or minimized, masculinized, if that's even a word. um
It is
and so
now.
whatever I was saying to my friend, yeah, it is now. um she said, gosh, you sound like you would make a great midwife. And that one liner like
It was
changed the
it.
course of my life.
Yeah.
Yeah. She introduced me to another person that she knew that was a student midwife and a doula at the time. And this other friend sent me home with like an armload of books and
Yes.
VHSs.
Oh wow, you're dating
Yep,
yourself a little bit there.
I sure am. But
Yeah.
hey, I've been in it for 15 years, and I think that's worth
That's where it
bragging about a
started.
little bit.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. And I just devoured that material. And I, watching the videos, I was like sobbing and like, is this normal to react like this? You know, watching these birth videos for the first time. And it was a calling. I mean, it clearly just like, then there was a doula training in my town a few months later, and then another one, and then I got involved in a nonprofit organization of doulas and started attending births as a doula and wrote grants to support low-income families having access to doulas.
I love that.
And then went to midwifery school and did some international training and joined a group practice in my hometown in Southern California. And I did that for 8 years with a group practice. There was a birth center, and we attended home births as well. And in the course of that 8 years, I got pregnant, got married, became a widow, relied on my dad for on-call childcare, and then my dad got cancer.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's a rough period.
And it was and then COVID happened, and then my landlord gave me notice when my dad was kind of, everything was just,
Happening at the same time.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so that was another like pivot moment where I was looking around and, looking at my rent more than doubling to stay in town, um, but also knowing I needed on-call childcare like nearby. Like logistically, it's really challenging.
Yeah.
Um, but I also knew I couldn't live with my dad, and I knew that he needed something different.
Yeah.
Um, and so that was one of those moments where I wrote my own rules, and I said,
Yes.
you know what? I I'm not gonna like engage in the hustle
Anymore.
that
No.
I'm already in. Yeah, I mean, COVID made our work really busy, which like, yay, people want out of hospital births, but like as a widowed mom, I could only hold so much.
Yeah.
Um, and so it became a moment of like, I just needed to put it all down and to give myself that permission. I mean, I'm still working on it. My nervous system is still regulating. And it's been a year and a half since I left that job.
Yeah. And I think it's
Yeah.
important to touch on that part, if you're okay to go there. So I lost my partner in 2019. I was widowed at 27 and 2019, and then I was like, oh, life could not possibly try me more than this. And then COVID happened. And I think between COVID and losing that person, that support network, that other half,
Yeah.
it gives your perspective such a shake. Like the hustle can't be the way anymore. Like my own experience, everything had to slow down, and it wasn't just because I had to be present, because I had my own, mental health to navigate.
Yeah.
You've got this business that you want to be there and hold space for people, but also you're like crumbling and falling apart and having to re-find your identity in the middle of all of that. So I think if you're okay to just talk about like how that shifted things for you, your perspective on everything, because I know from my experience it was huge. It did change everything.
100%. Yeah, I know I kind of like glazed over that for a moment. Thank you for
Yeah.
like pulling that. I was like, oh, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then, my life totally fell apart, but then, moved on.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's slow down there a little bit. Um, it, I mean, it was an accident. There was a flying accident. So like there's like a traumatic, shock aspect that felt a little bit different. I lost my dad to cancer a couple of months ago.
I'm sorry.
And so I've been doing a lot of like
Yeah.
comparing, because I've had a sudden loss and then kind of like a sickness loss. I mean, obviously very different relationships, but
Yeah.
that's kind of the context of how shattering it felt. My son was 15 months old. Um, and I did take off 4 months from work, which I'm super grateful for. And I absolutely needed that
Definitely.
time. Um, and I felt ready to come back. It was a good move to kind of like keep my life moving.
Yeah.
Like that was one of my kind of initial kind of commitments and reactions to the grief experience is like I just want to keep it moving. And
Yeah.
that's ebbed and flowed, and it's gotten a little stagnant with a um one of the things I succeeded in leaving behind in California was a a safe but like more more than I wanted wine habit.
Yeah.
It never I was able to like be a responsible and safe midwife, but when I was off call and not working, like that was my go-to. And that was a little bit of like emotional
Yeah.
stagnation, but also like a tool. Like I got through that time. Anyway, it was what it was.
I relate. I'm 2 years sober
Right.
now, but it was definitely something that I had as a coping mechanism to get through that period. So no judgment. I was definitely there
Yeah.
myself. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for relating. I call that my where's my epidural phase of
Ah,
grief.
I love that comparison. Yes.
I mean, birth nerd all the way.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
everything
These
is
are
a
the
labor
things you're
analogy
tying
and
it
an
back to.
imprint, and it's like kind of
Yeah,
impactful.
yeah. Give me the
Um,
needle, please. Take this away.
exactly.
Numb me
Yep.
out. Yeah.
I cannot do this anymore.
Yeah.
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 So that was yeah, that was a few years of my grief experience. And yeah, I mean, it sounds like you maybe experienced something similar. I feel like when you're so close to seeing how quickly life can go, it's like if I don't know, I'm an analogy person, so I just popped into my mind like if you have $100 bill in your pocket and you're like really excited to spend it, and then all of a sudden you put your hand in your pocket and that $100 bill's not there anymore, you're like, oh no, where'd it go? And then you find it and you're like, oh, it's like a new lease on the value.
I love that so
And
much.
that is, I don't live that 100% of my life, but underlying, like that's the
The
main,
seed is
the
there.
kind of like one of the guiding principles of my life. And
Yeah.
my retired certified financial advisor, ex Navy pilot father-in-law cannot understand why I would leave a stable career, move to a state where I can't practice as a midwife. I moved here with no job, with like savings, but like not
Yeah.
really enough. Um, and he just doesn't understand it because we have different
That
values.
yeah. And that different perspective, I think
Yeah.
as the partner and not the parent, I from my own grief process, I can see that it impacted us all in different ways. And I definitely relate to that idea that I had that moment of, right, I'm going to have my business and there's no messing around anymore. And this is important to me. And I'm not going to make decisions that are from a place of what does someone else expect of me anymore. I mean, I
Yeah.
definitely had a period where that was a bit rocky, but now I think the way I do my business and do life in general, like my priorities are different, and I definitely put that back to, like you said, you've seen, oh, I love that mug. I have a thing for word mugs, so I love that so much. I think that perspective does come back to it shifts because what's important is completely different. So I love that you went there, and thank you for exploring that. I know it can be easy to brush over, but then it can be easy to talk about. It can be hard to talk about as well. How do you think that change led to the work that you're doing now? That change of
Mm,
perspective led to the work that you're doing now?
100% related. So I had some really, like, I'm still figuring out how to describe these experiences, like spiritual experiences, like messages from my late husband, symbols, like
Yeah.
signals, in the form of geese flying over.
I have a
um
goose phobia, so that's
a
my own
goose
hang up.
phobia. Oh, well, maybe
You
another
can
time I
keep
can
them.
share that.
You can keep those
Or
signs.
no, okay.
That's fine.
Okay. I won't share it then. I
Yeah,
thought maybe I could desensitize you a little bit, but
Oh,
we
no.
don't have to go there.
I literally got, so I work with Frigg, right, the Norse goddess. I've been devoted to her for 7 years, and quick tangent. And I got a tattoo, and goose is one of her animals, right? So I was like, if I get it tattooed, maybe that will desensitize me. And then my tattoo artist made it the scariest fucking goose you've ever seen in your life. And now there's a
That's
part of my arm
intense.
that I don't want to look at anymore.
Oh my God.
So that's my hang up. So that's mine. So
Well,
carry on. Sorry to
I've got
derail you
these
there.
sweet, sweet
Cute.
little chevron of geese.
I love that. See, that's cute. Yeah. That's my bad. Don't get a scary goose if you're scared of geese. It doesn't help at all. I love
That is
that.
really funny. You
So
need
as you,
like sunglasses on your goose or something. Have the tattooers like put
well,
some.
there's a little gap, and we've been talking for the last 5 tattoos about putting a hat on them. Like maybe that'll help. So there's like the running ideas at the moment is a sombrero, a party hat, or a helicopter hat. So they're like, if we put a silly hat on it,
Nice.
maybe that will help. I don't think
Or like
so.
a bonnet,
A
Mother
bonnet.
Goose.
Oh, bonnet. There you go. Now that's going to go in the running for how we're going to possibly make this thing less scary.
Soften her up a little bit.
Soften. Yeah, I love that. Sorry to derail. You said you were getting signs. Now
Oh
everyone's
yeah,
gonna send
the
me
spiritual
geese things.
aspect of
Yes.
becoming a widow. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I've so backing up a little bit, I've done like energy work and kind of received like spirit guidance work for almost 15 years from a teacher of mine named Alea Dow. And she did a session with me almost a month after my husband passed, um, and just kind of helped me put purpose to the accident in a spiritual way. And like some people would minimize this as like, rationalization and coping and putting meaning to something that just happened, and like call it what you will, but for me it rang true. So it ties into like even the signs from the geese, and kind of like a like totem
Yeah.
messages from geese, and that being true, and like some of the messages that this teacher shared about like soul contracts and how we come into this life to like we have a purpose and to learn things, and my husband and I are both very service oriented, and there was this whole, yeah, just like contract that we had created agreeing to this, um and the purpose being to like help dissolve the veils between the realms, so that he and I kind of like maintaining some form of like multi-dimensional relationship, we are like evolving humanity. Everyone is,
Yeah.
each in their own way, and this is our little sliver of the
Contribution.
pie.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that has informed my birth work since since the first few months of being back. I started having really profound, almost like clairsentience, like just knowings, um of babies. Like one of the first ones I remember was driving to the birth center to meet a second time mom, and late I knew that things were going quickly. There was another midwife and like an assistant, like part of the birth team was already there at the birth center meeting her, and I was kind of like the last one coming in on my way. And I started this before this birth, even I started this practice of um like a spiritual anchoring
Yeah.
and like grounding practice, like anchoring into my own um kind of like line of light,
Yeah.
my teacher calls it. And from that grounded place, I then connect with like the spirit of the baby and the mom, and just kind of like present myself of service,
Yeah.
and open myself to like receive messages, and I feel like sometimes that has informed what I do, but in this particular case I was doing that and just felt the baby. I was like, oh, he's here already, as I was driving.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and sure enough, I got to the birth center maybe like 7 minutes later, and the baby had been born
Oh,
5 minutes before that.
wow. That's
Yeah.
incredible. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think so clairsentience is my clear. And I it's interesting that you made that connection because I had clairsentience as a I don't want to say tool, but it was something that I leaned on before the accident, but after the accident it was definitely stronger. It has definitely been a huge thing for me, and I hadn't made that connection until you said that. So thank you. I hadn't,
Um,
yeah. So maybe there's something in that purpose, that contract, that soul contract is definitely something I related to because I had to come to terms with the idea and accept that I was meant to be the person he was with. I wasn't there when the accident happened, but I was meant to be the relationship he was in when he passed. And that became very clear to me, almost like that person holding his hand through that last end of life stuff, even if
mm,
it was an accident and it was sudden. I related to that part you were talking about, but that clairsentience was definitely, it's very strong in my work now. It makes me a better coach. It makes me a better Volvo when I'm talking with people. So I love that that's showing up in your work now. That
mm,
capacity to connect and anchor in is absolutely beautiful.
yeah, that's really cool. I mean, obviously, so not cool, and sorry that you had to
I
go through that
understand. Yeah.
kind of loss, but really interesting that we kind of share, get like this blossoming, right, of
Afterward, yeah,
that kind of
yeah.
tool. Yeah, I
And
mean,
maybe it's an
connection.
awareness. Maybe it's that
Hmm.
we were forced into that site. We were forced into that space, to that awareness, and it's brought that up, that silver lining in the tragedy, so to speak. Um,
Right.
what do you find hardest when speaking about your work? What do you think is the most difficult part of trying to talk about or tell people what your work is or does?
That is a great question. Um, I think for a lot of people, like bridging the spiritual aspect with the physical, because like people kind of know what a doula is more so these
Yeah,
days, even kind of know what a midwife is, even enough to ask like, oh, those still exist.
yeah,
um and that's like the physical part. And for me it's like just describing like, well, we're also energy bodies, and there's this, and soul contracts, and there's this, this potent time of creating a new life, and it just a little bit of like work or intention, um to really like foster those energies and imprints, and like make choices, kind of like how we started with like the needlepoint shifts and
yeah,
um the intentions, figuring out how to talk to people about like, hey, repattern ancestral trauma.
That's very relatable. And I think a lot of people in my audience and my clients, when it comes to matching and marrying that physical work that you're doing that people find easy to relate to or understand, that physical side, but then you've got this energetic side of things that people are like, it's a bit woo, I don't know about that. And trying to find that way to bring them together. I think a lot of people listening probably relate to that idea.
Cool.
Yeah. The one thing that I definitely want to ask at the end of all my interviews is, what is your impact or legacy goal? What do you want to leave behind?
I love that question. And I would best describe it as like a sparkly sigh. Just like, oh, that Jenna. Like reassurance and it's like interesting because it's I want to like reassure and calm people, but also kind of like fire up this little rebellion fire and be like, oh, I feel so confident being a mom, down with the patriarchy.
And I think that reassurance, it's almost that permission slip, coming back to that idea of creating your own rules and living by your own rules. Having that permission slip is sometimes enough to be like, you know what? I am just going to do it my own way. I am allowed to eat McDonald's. I am allowed to go and do it this way. Because there's no like police system that's going to come and tell you. I mean, there's social media and there's trolls and there's people who might have opinions, but at the end of the day, like, use the block button, because they don't actually have any authority to tell you you're doing things the wrong way.
Exactly.
So I love that's that feeling, that what sparkly sigh. I love it so much.
Yeah.
It's so colorful. That's amazing. Well, thank you so much for jumping on with me, Jenna. I love that we had so many touch points in there that I wasn't even consciously aware of until we started talking.
Same.
We will put all of your links and everything in the caption so people can come and check out the wonderful work you're doing with parents. But you have an opt-in. You have a freebie for people if they want to come in and learn more about that, like, not stressing out when they're starting that parenthood journey. What was that one called?
Yeah, 3 steps to fertilize your family tree.
I love that
And
imagery.
Their tools. Yeah. I mean, it's like you think of the family tree, and growing a new baby is like, oh, a new little branch.
Yeah.
And so what are you gonna like fertilize that? It's a juncture, right? Like, yeah. So what are you gonna continue on that branch or do differently? Yeah, so a lot of like advocacy there and choice.
Yes.
Yeah, so that PDF just has some steps for getting present so you can parent from your heart. Some lovely little images and descriptions, and at the bottom there's a little bit of info about me, as well as a link to book a discovery call with me. Yeah, so that's all gonna be in there.
Awesome. Well, I'll make sure I pop those links in. Agape the Heart. I'll put the link to your website and everything in there as well. Otherwise, thank you so much for sharing your story and jumping on with me.
Thank you, Dana. It was really lovely chatting with you.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of By the Cottage Hearth with me, your host, Dana Maree. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow on whatever platform you're on to be notified of new episodes. And you can also follow me on By the Cottage Hearth on Facebook and Instagram. Check out show notes for any links or freebie goodies that I might have going at the time. Otherwise, I'll see you on the next episode. Keep healing.